Welcome to another episode of DMV 360. Well, every month we want to bring you some mental health awareness to help break down the stigma on getting mental health. In our Mind Over Matters segment, we are focusing on men's mental health. And did you know that we have over 300 wineries and vineyards right here in the DMV? We take you to one in Prince George's County. And listen to this. It's the only restaurant, a brewery, and toy store, and it's right here in the DMV. And our Spotlight Person of the Week turned one of his most difficult times in his life into a passion with purpose. All that coming up next on DMV 360. The alarm has been sounded and mental health has finally taken center stage in the national forefront. For men, seeking mental health help is still a struggle, but not seeking help can have life or death consequences. From athletes to actors, men's mental health is emerging into the global conversation. But despite more transparency, men continue to struggle with the stigmas in seeking help. So I sat down with licensed clinical marriage and family therapist Tariq Walton to discuss the challenges men face when it comes to their personal mental wellness and how we can help. I just think that it is so critical for us to be talking about mental health awareness, just like we talk about our spiritual wellness and our physical wellness. We are seeing record numbers, and I'm pretty sure you are seeing, your phone is probably
non-stop. Yeah.
Non-stop.
Yep. People are calling every day.
Yes.
Either sending emails, calling, everyone's reaching out because it's such a hot thing now.
Yeah, it most definitely is. I just want to read some numbers, some statistics to you, and then we can kind of pick up from there so the audience and the viewers know. Nearly 1 in 10 men experience depression and anxiety in their lifetime. Even though more women attempt suicide, more men die at a 4 times higher rate from suicide. Yeah, more successful. And about 6 out of every 10 men experience some form of trauma in their life. And that trauma could be, a major loss, death, PTSD, combat, divorce. There's a lot of things, which kind of rolls into, studies also show that men are less likely to seek help. And you put that even more less likely for men of color.
Yep.
But let's just talk about men and why are they less likely to seek help?
Well, one reason why men are less likely to seek help is that for a lot of men, they don't believe that help will work. They don't believe there's actually help out there. Talking just never occurred to them that that would be a helpful way to help solve some of their problems. They figure if I just go through it myself, it'll work itself out. But they don't believe that talking is actually a helpful way of solving problems.
Now, I sat down last month with another doctor, clinical psychologist, Dr. Barbara Tobias, and she was just, she said something very interesting. She said, a lot of men don't talk because they really don't know how to express themselves. How do you address that when you're one-on-one with your patients?
Well, a lot of the work I do is with men, especially men of color, around learning how to express yourself, recognizing the importance of how expressing yourself actually builds those emotional bridges with your loved ones, with your friends, with coworkers, that it's important for you to learn how to actually articulate other feelings than anger and sadness.
Toxic masculinity came up a lot during my research on men seeking mental health. What is that, and how does that impact men in terms of seeking help?
Toxic masculinity is a way that men often look at the world as a male-dominated place, and that whatever's happening, they need to be the ones in charge, they need to be the ones in control, not being willing to actually share in some of the decision-making. And so for a lot of men, it's, that more, if you think about, I'm the provider, I'm the person who's actually in control of the finances and the mood and the tempo of the household. For a lot of men, that's the idea behind what toxic masculinity is.
Oh, you just hit a key word, safe. And to me, safe is also being vulnerable. And do you find that that's part of the reason why men don't seek help, is that vulnerability lion that's in the back?
And that's one of the reasons, one of the things I actually communicate with a lot of women is that for a lot of men, they don't feel safe. So if you're wondering why they're not talking or they're not expressing themselves, they're not being emotional, they don't feel emotionally safe.
Now, you said something really important, and I find this to be so true, and I'm not a man, so please help me with this. This is just my interaction with men and my relationships with men. Even men with men don't communicate. It's that whole bravado thing still, and so we have a lot of men walking around with depression, anxiety, bipolar, schizophrenia, really struggling.
Yeah. Well, you'd be surprised. A lot, as men mature, I think they become a little bit more vulnerable with their friends because they see them going through the same things. One of the reasons why a lot of men would shut down is because they're so judgmental of themselves. They figure everyone's looking at them the same way, so if they open up, then people would judge them the same way. When they recognize that no one's judging them and that they have people who are going through the same things, expressing the same kind of experiences, then they're much more likely to open up.
Now, you deal with couples, and we were just saying before the camera started rolling, that's hard for a wife to see behavior that maybe her husband might be suffering from depression or anxiety. How does she approach that?
It's hard. It's really hard. Oftentimes you'll find with couples that the last thing you want to hear from your mate is another criticism. So it's really hard to take that in and
because
recognize.
Because he takes it as a criticism.
Yeah, they do. And it's almost like you don't trust the intentions, but it's not until you sit down with somebody and you recognize, oh, they do love me, they want the best for me. It's not just a competition where they're trying to get over on me, but this is actually, this is something that can help me.
How do we change this stigma?
It's changing. It's already changing. It's just more information, more exposure, and just more, more effort to reach these different communities that have not had a history of working with therapists. You have to get in there.
Coming up next.
Tasting and testing the grapes as they're ripening.
Well, we knew what the neighborhood didn't have. So the idea was, let's open a business that would serve the neighborhood.
Jordan knows he shouldn't eat this entire bowl of nachos, but tonight he's earned that right. Because a few hours ago, in the middle of happy hour, he recognized a sign. Not from the gods or a bolt of lightning, but from a double heart, a kissy face, and a fourth ha in ha ha ha. That's when Jordan knew he was buzzed. So when it was time to go, he got a ride home instead of driving. Be a legend like Jordan. Recognize your buzzed warning signs and get a ride home. Buzz driving is drunk driving.
We all know that Maryland is known for its blue crabs, but did you know that Maryland has over 80 wineries and vineyards in the state? And you don't have to go very far to have a true wine experience. And I had no idea that just 17 miles outside of D.C. in southern Prince George's County is Gemini Winery and Vineyards, where wine lovers and novices such as myself can experience a little bit of Napa Valley right in our own backyards. This is so exciting. I've never been in a vineyard before. This is amazing. What are we looking at?
This is Traminette.
Okay.
And these are small buds, and sometimes it's difficult to tell the difference between the buds and the hips as the berries begin to form. So the buds and the hips both look very much alike at this stage.
The buds and the hips.
Well, you know what a rose hip is. It's after it blooms. So just before it blooms and just after it blooms, it can look pretty much the same. But these are little tiny bunches of grapes that will spend the rest of the growing season forming and ripening.
The 200-acre working farm has been in the Gemini family since 1897, and for the past 15 years, the fourth generation started producing wine grapes on the farm.
These particular vines are about 15 years old.
15 years old. and there's after it's just they're annuals basically.
Yes, they're very much like you would expect a fruit tree to be, an apple tree or pear tree, and they get pruned every year to control them. So if the vine could pick the perfect environment for the vine to grow in, it would choose to be at the base of the tallest oak tree in the woods. It would grow all the way up to the top of the oak tree, spread out across the whole top of the oak tree's canopy, and it would make as many grapes as it possibly could, and they only need to be good enough to be eaten by the birds and the raccoons. That's what the vine would do if it had its perfect environment.
Sure.
So what we're doing here is we're controlling the size of the vine, we're controlling the amount of fruit, because we want the fruit to be better fruit. And because the vine can't grow as many grapes as it wants, it focuses on making the grapes that it is growing more tasty.
And how long is the growing season?
Here we obviously they sprout when they're ready, depending on when they feel spring has sprung.
Yeah.
And
isn't it funny how nature tells you?
That's right. And then we're tasting and testing the grapes as they're ripening. And so here our harvest can be generally in September, where farther north, because they have a little bit later spring, they will have a little later harvest as well.
And the vineyard yields over 800 vines per acre, producing up to 3,000 to 5,000 bottles of delicious Maryland wines per year. From farm to table, the winery and vineyard is a one-stop shop where every step of the winemaking process is done right on the farm.
So part of making wine is tasting the grapes from long before they're ripe, all the way through tasting the wine at every step.
At every step.
So this wine is probably ready to bottle.
Great. And so what do we have in this vat right here?
This is Vidal Blanc.
This is a Vidal Blanc. From sniffing to tasting, enjoy a full wine experience at Gemini Winery and Vineyards. It's just one of those places where you feel at home, tucked just under the Baltimore Avenue overpass and part of the Route 1 corridor. Once serving as the neighborhood hardware store, Franklin's has been a mainstay in the community for over 30 years.
We are residents of this neighborhood. We moved in a few years before that. So when we saw the hardware store for sale, it's like we have to buy it and open a local business. And the rest is, well, we're still here 30 years later.
The rest is history, most definitely. Did you know that it was going to be Franklin's, and that did you have an idea that you wanted to serve food?
Well, we knew what the neighborhood didn't have. So the idea was, let's open a business that would serve the neighborhood. So we opened up in the little hardware store as a deli in the back and a general store in the front, because we knew what was missing. And then 10 years later, wrangled the funds to build the brew pub and expand. And 10 years after that, we expanded the store. So it's been a continuing story.
And Mike says listening to his customers was the driving evolution of the deli turned restaurant that's serving up good old homemade pub fare.
Well, first of all, everything is from scratch. So even if it's a burger, it's a high quality local burger from Rosetta Farms. Our onion rings, we hand cut the onions, colossal onions, and dip them. Everything is from scratch. So it is American fare, but it's done well.
Experience is the word. When you walk into the door, you can get a sense of what Franklin's is all about.
When you walk in the door, you feel a positive energy, and chances are, if you've been here a few times, we recognize you, might know what your dishes are, what your preferences are. And it's not just the food, it's not just the service, it's not just the atmosphere, it's kind of all of the above that creates the experience.
And talking about all of the above and a combination of things, Franklin's is the first microbrewery here in Prince George's County.
It is.
How did that happen?
What sold for us in terms of the beer case were all of the microbreweries, all the local craft breweries. There weren't that many local, but they were all American craft brews. And this being an area that was in neglect commercially, even though the surrounding neighborhood was a good neighborhood, I wanted to have the best chance of success. And to me, it all came together as open a brewery and they will come. And that is in fact what happened.
Local, local, local. This place screams local. It is one of the foundations that you and your wife really wanted to continue. I mean, you look on the walls. We talk about some of the art that is decorating this place.
For 30 years, and even we started as a deli and general store, we always hung local art. And about 20 years ago when we opened, there was an organization of local artists that formed. And that organization and the artists split the proceeds. I don't even know how they split it between the two of them. But what we get is new local art every 2 months or so. And everybody's happy.
You can't come to Franklin's without going to the general store.
Yeah.
Why did you guys decide to continue the general store and then just build on it? I love it.
Well, it's quirky and it's serving the neighborhood, and I can't imagine doing this without it. I like to tell people that there's lots of brew pubs around now, but we're still probably the world's only combination toy store at brew pub.
Why do you think it has been able to last for 30 years?
A few things. One, we've always served the neighborhood and given back to the neighborhood. We've always done on Mondays and Tuesdays non-profit fundraiser nights, and people feel that. People get it, they understand it. So during the pandemic, for example, they were incredibly supportive of us.
Congratulations as well on being nominated and getting a Grammy Award. How does that?
Thank you.
You're such a humble guy.
I don't know how I feel about getting awarded for being old, but that's it's the way it is.
Old. It's just about the success and everything that represents. I mean, it's about community, it's about giving back, it's about, I mean, you've done such a fabulous job on being a model business here in Prince George's County.
Well, thank you.
What does that mean to you?
Well, it does make me feel like I've done something meaningful with my life. You know, the restaurant business is really, really hard. And everywhere. So, you know, you hear all the complaints there, or, you know, well, oh my God, we could be doing this better, that better. I'd like to say we're going to keep doing this until we get everything completely right, knowing that that's never going to happen, so we'll be open forever. But there isn't a day or a week that goes by that one of my customers will pull me aside and go, thank you for being here. And it's sort of like our customers are so invested in us, and that's humbling, and it's rewarding, and it makes me feel like anyway that I've had a worthwhile career doing this.
Experiencing the community at Franklin's. Coming up next.
So we like to encourage men who are men to help other younger men to become men.
As we work to get through these times together, you may not be thinking about blood donation, but blood is needed to save the lives of people who are sick with a range of illnesses. It's easy and safe to give. If you are in good health, please donate. We need heroes now. Visit redcrossblood.org to schedule an appointment.
Life is promised to bring you some curveballs, but it's also an opportunity to turn your lemons into lemonade. And our Spotlight Person of the Week did exactly that. Shortly after returning home from the Vietnam War, Ernest Woodson found himself facing one of the most difficult times in his life.
I had just won custody of my son through a divorce, which I wasn't prepared for. It was just a journey that I wasn't expecting to take on. I didn't have a framework or a baseline for fatherhood because I didn't have a father in my life.
He admits being a single father was challenging, but he was determined to be there and make a difference in his son's life.
So it was a struggle. Let me just say, first of all, it wasn't easy. It was a struggle. There were, not that my son, and I hope he will talk to you about this maybe one day, I hope I never made him feel that he wasn't loved, he wasn't needed, he wasn't welcomed. But there were many days that I said, wow, this is too much. But along the way, I met 4 other guys who were single dads right here in Maryland. And we got together to support each other. You know, when I went to work, if I was working late, I would call one and they would pick up my son or take him to McDonald's or do something. And so we sort of networked like women were doing. And so we decided to come together and incorporate and become Fathers Incorporated. That's the name, Fathers Incorporated. We all come together as one.
Formed in 1987, Fathers Incorporated mission is promoting the traditional values of brotherhood, manhood, fatherhood, and gentlemanship.
The mission, and that mission wasn't really necessarily formal at that time. We didn't really incorporate that mission, manhood, fatherhood, brotherhood, and gentlemanship until later on. But we want men to embrace the whole notion of fatherhood, not just be a procreator, not just pay the child support, but be a full-time parent in the process. If you're not married to the lady, at least represent a quality human being to her. Because the child, if he's with the mom, he's gonna suffer when she suffers. If she's emotionally beat down and worn out because you're not treating her like a lady or treating her like she's important, the son's gonna suffer. So we wanna just get those things out there and try to make a difference. Just be the best person, be the best role model we can be for our young men, existing fathers and boys.
Let's talk about the values of Fathers Incorporated, brotherhood. What is that? What does that look like?
I like to think about it in terms of embracing everybody, giving all men, whether they're black, white, blue, green, no color barrier. Here, let's all come together as brothers so we can exist in this world as one, regardless of color, sex, sexual orientation, whatever. We need to come together as brothers and treat each other as brothers. You know, we look at manhood in terms of, there's this concept that being born a male is a rite of birth, but being a man is a rite of passage. You have to go through something to become a man. You're not born a man. So it's a journey. And so we like to encourage men who are men to help other younger men to become men. And we preach this to all the males who are capable of making children or having children. Their responsibility is to embrace the whole notion of fatherhood, not just be a procreator, and not abdicate your responsibility to your wife or your spouse, or leave it in the hands of God and walk away. But to really be there, to see that child through full development. My son is 51 years old, and I'm still his father. The idea of being a gentleman is treating everyone with respect. The first thing is respect for yourself, having self-respect.
Along with those core values, Fathers Incorporated has several other programs that help encourage, support, and celebrate men being successful fathers.
You know, the Father of the Year Award program is the staple of our organization. It launched us. It put us there because as as I told you earlier, we were all single dads trying to make a difference, not only in our lives, but in the lives of others as well. And as we've gotten older now, the journey to Disney World, to pick up kids, to do those kinds of things, we just can't do it. And to drive to 18 hours and 18 hours back is too much. So how can we continue to do that? How do we make that difference? And the vision came that, well, listen, let's find men or fathers living in the midst of chaos and confusion, right in the heart of the urban city, facing all the turmoil, drugs, sex, rape, all the things that go on. Let's find a good man doing what's right and what's good and hold him up as a role model to the rest. But I will tell you, at 71, I've been up and down. I've had money. I've been broke. I've had material things. I've had a lot. But the things that I enjoy most are the things that have meaning to me, and that's love. My family, my son, my grandson, and the people I met along the way that really encouraged me to keep moving forward in spite of the differences. Just keep moving forward and be positive. Be very positive.
Well, I hope you enjoyed this episode. See you next time around the DMV.
Here are your AARP top tips on caregiver preparedness during coronavirus. First, form a caregiving team. Create a list of people in your family and friend network who can help with caregiving tasks. Take an inventory of supplies in your loved one's home. Try to have a 2-week supply of essential items. Make a list of the care recipient's medications and medical contacts. Be sure to have prescriptions on hand and ask the pharmacist for an extra 30-day supply. Make a plan to stay connected. To prevent social isolation, set up available technology to help loved ones stay connected and schedule regular chats. Finally, maintain your own self-care. Follow the Centers for Disease Control's guidelines for coronavirus safety. And have a backup plan for care in case you become ill. For more caregiving tips during the coronavirus pandemic, go to aarp.org/caregiving.
Did you know breast cancer kills more than 41,000 people every year in the U.S.?
That's 113 people every day.
That's unacceptable.
African American women die from breast cancer nearly 41% more than Caucasian women.
That's unacceptable.
Nearly 250,000 men and women in the U.S.
will be diagnosed with breast cancer this year.
That's unacceptable. Breast cancer is the leading cause of all cancer deaths for Hispanic women.
Breast cancer is unacceptable.
Unacceptable. Unacceptable.
Unacceptable.
Help us save lives. Together with Susan G. Komen, we're committed to reducing U.S. breast cancer deaths by half.
And we're going to do it by 2026.
Support Susan G. Komen. Join our fight. Save lives. Visit komen.org/unacceptable.
Failure is unacceptable.
Vision loss is not something that you feel until it happens.
Most people lose their vision from diseases like macular degeneration and glaucoma, not at birth.
With macular degeneration, you lose your central vision.
You have a blind spot right in the center of your face, so I can't actually see your face.
So even that little circle in which I could see became a big blur.
I was 65 when I first was diagnosed with glaucoma.
There were no symptoms. I had no headaches.
3 million Americans have glaucoma, and half don't even know it.
11 million people in the United States have macular degeneration.
You lose mobility, independence, changes your entire life.
So many eye disorders can be treated if caught early.
My husband tells me that I have beautiful brown eyes, and I don't want to lose that.
Make a plan today to get your eyes checked.
Visit brightfocus.org to learn more.